Welcome back to the King Films College Football Playoff Scenarios video, and let's get right into it. But before we do, I want to emphasize everyone to subscribe to the channel, as a very small percentage of the viewers of the videos are actually subscribed. So just check that you are subscribed real quick, and let's get right into it with the tier list of all possible teams that can still make the college football playoff with just 2 weeks left to go. And in tier 1, still going to be the same Georgia and Alabama scenario. If Alabama loses close in the SEC championship, they are probably still going to get in at this point with Oregon's loss. And then Georgia just can't absolutely blow it. They're probably clinched in at this point, and they've proven that with their play throughout the season. In tier number 2, we're only going to have 2 teams now, and it's going to be Michigan, who got the unit of help that they needed with Ohio State beating Michigan State, so they now control their own destiny. If either of these teams win out, you can expect to see them in the college football playoff. Now, let's get into tier 3, and we've had a recent promotion, and this is going to be Cincinnati, who jumps Oregon now, and this is going to be a great debate. And it's only this way if Alabama wins out. If Alabama loses to Georgia, then it's probably not a debate. Any of these teams can probably make it if they win out. But as I said before, the committee might really like Alabama. So say Alabama wins out against Georgia in the SEC championship game. Will Oklahoma State make it, or will Cincinnati make it? Well, let's look at some case analysis here. And we're going to start with Cincinnati against Oklahoma State. So personally, I think that Oklahoma State is going to be favored over Cincinnati, and then Oklahoma is going to be last. And according to this case analysis, you can see that that is the case. So how this works is you're going to want to be honing in on that makes playoff percentage in the middle. And you can pretty much disregard all the check marks to the right. I'll just tell you what happened here. Pretty much Georgia wins against Georgia Tech, but then they lose to Alabama, as I already described before. Cincinnati and Oklahoma State win out, and then just for the fun of it, I gave Ohio State the win out as well. So as you can see, Alabama is clearly in the playoff, Ohio State is clearly in the playoff, and this generator seems to favor Oklahoma State over Cincinnati in the playoff at this point. Of course, it gives Georgia only a 56% chance to make the playoff, but that is hocus pocus. Georgia's percent is actually greater than 99%. Even if they lose to Alabama in the championship game, assuming they win against Georgia Tech. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is that the committee may select Oklahoma State over Cincinnati, even though they might rank Cincinnati higher for this week's rankings. But let's compare Cincinnati to Oklahoma, and we see that the opposite is the case. Same thing happens besides these 2 teams, but this time Oklahoma wins out and Cincinnati continues to win out. This time it likes Cincinnati at 71% chance to make the playoff and Oklahoma at 60%. And we put in a couple other results here. You don't really have to worry about Oregon in this scenario, and I think Georgia's percent is a lot higher. So I think Georgia's pretty much a lock again, as I did before. But what is interesting here is that we seem to have, at least by the metric standpoint, Oklahoma State is greater than Cincinnati is greater than Oklahoma, just by how the committee is treating these teams so far. And obviously, the 2 Big 12 teams have better games left on their resume that can be had, and Cincinnati only really has Houston in their conference championship. So with that being said, you guys can comment your predictions below. To me, it's not really clear who the committee will favor in that scenario, but let's move on to tier number 4, where things get a lot more muddy. In tier 4, a lot of people are dismissing Oregon, but they're still very much in it, along with Notre Dame and Baylor. And what these teams need collectively is just one SEC team. They need Georgia to win out and spank Alabama in the championship game by a lot. And then they need Cincinnati to lose, preferably to Houston in the American Conference Championship game. And then they need a 2-loss Big 12 champion, which will happen, of course, if Baylor wins out. And then if Oregon wins out, obviously that will be the 2-loss Pac-12. And then they also need a 2-loss Big Ten. Well, the only real way this happens is if Wisconsin were to win out, or I guess if Iowa can make the Big Ten championship game and then they win. Pretty much what I'm saying is that it cannot be a Big Ten East champion. So let's take a look at these scenarios again. We've got a couple lined up for you. So here's a Baylor and Notre Dame scenario. As you can see here, Georgia wins out. And again, I can only click on so many of these games here, so it's not going to be the optimal percentage, but this is one for Baylor and Notre Dame. Baylor wins out here, and then as a result of that, Oklahoma State would have to win Bedlam here. Notre Dame wins their last game. So Notre Dame is in, Baylor is in, and since Wisconsin won out, Ohio State is no longer making it. So there's no American, no Big Ten, obviously no Oregon in the Pac-12. We gave Utah the win out. So this clears a path for Baylor to make it 96% of the time. So they're very much in it if they can get a lot of chaos to go their way. Same thing with Notre Dame. Let's show another scenario, which is Baylor and Oregon here. And we see that in this case, it's pretty much the same thing as last time. We do not have a result in that Notre Dame against Stanford game, so they're at the 45% there. But Baylor clearly has the best path of all these teams because Oregon's only game is against Utah, whereas Baylor may have a better team in Oklahoma State against Oklahoma as those two teams play, strengthening one of their resumes. So again, Wisconsin winning here seems to be the key, as it pretty much knocks out the whole Big Ten in these scenarios where either Oregon or Baylor can win out. This is the same thing, and the key piece again being whether or not Georgia can win out and beat Auburn badly in that championship game. Now let's take a look at one where Oregon just has to get it done themselves, and it's really hard to give Oregon a really high percentage here, but here we have them at 65%, the clear front runner, and you see the three other teams there are Ohio State, which obviously they would want to win out because they have that win over Ohio State, and then Georgia winning out would guarantee Georgia the spot, and then Oklahoma State winning out would DQ Baylor from the playoff, and then Notre Dame is sitting there with a 31% chance. So that's kind of a Notre Dame / Oregon scenario there. Again, you can comment below who you think the committee would select out of those two, but these scenarios are, very unlikely, as I think Ohio State's probably just going to win the Big Ten, or Michigan, whoever wins that game. I think they aren't losing the Big Ten championship, but just for the fun of it, let's show a Notre Dame scenario here. We got Notre Dame up to 75% with Oregon and Baylor not able to get it done. So the two teams you have solidified here are Georgia and Oklahoma State. Obviously, Cincinnati's not going to be a factor in any of these with just the one loss. As you can see on the bottom, Houston winning out provides that for us. And so the likelihood of Ohio State or a Big Ten team like Wisconsin from the West winning is very low, but combine that with Cincinnati having to have a loss, and you've got a very, very remote possibility of that happening. But what if I told you that there was another team that can make it, one that you're not hearing anywhere else, and it is Wisconsin? And this is the tier I call the concoction, because Wisconsin pretty much needs everything to go right to even have a chance at giving the committee a thought about putting them in the playoff. And what they need here, it's quite simple. They need to dominate their last two games, so against Minnesota on the road and against probably an Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. They need to win both of those games probably by 50. Obviously, the committee likes Wisconsin at this point, but not enough to put them in the playoff or anywhere near it so far. They're in the mid-teens. We'll see where they are after this week. They need the 3-loss Pac-12 champion, so they need Utah to win out of the Pac-12, and I think they'd get the nod over Utah there, as Ohio State seems to be the better team than Utah or than Oregon right now. And they need losses by Cincinnati and Notre Dame, and that's probably where this one falls apart. But let's take a look at it anyways. In this case, you don't mind two SEC teams in here because the committee is just searching for teams to put in the playoff. So again, Oregon will have 3 losses. Utah will have 3 losses. You're going to have 2 SEC teams, but we'll see how much the committee likes Cincinnati, if they will let them in with a loss. But as you can see on this scenario, Cincinnati has less than a 1% chance. So even though Wisconsin only has a 40% chance of making it right now, which actually does go up to 50% if I clicked on Utah to win out, but the probability is too low. But you see that Wisconsin is actually the fourth greatest percent chance team to get in here. So this is a very interesting scenario. I really don't think Wisconsin can win out, but if they can get all of this to happen, including that Notre Dame loss to a Stanford team that has just been abysmal down the stretch, this would be a crazy scenario, and I think that Wisconsin is the last team that can make the playoff, but this proves that there is a path for them. So if any of you Wisconsin fans want to drop your hopes down in the comment below, maybe drop a prayer, because this one is far-fetched to say the least. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and comment your own predictions below.